Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants Hangout. My name is Joe Grabowski, and I will be your host for today. And all this month of February, we've been celebrating amazing women in science, adventure, exploration, and conservation. And we're keeping things rolling for another couple days. Really excited today to be joining the Ripley's Aquarium of Canada in Toronto, Ontario. And we're joined by two aquarists. We're joined by Danielle Eisner and Sophie Wolven. And today, pretty exciting, we're going to get to see the aquarium feeding of the two sawfish. So I'm going to throw things over to Danielle, and she's going to take over now, and we'll get to see Sophie feeding the sawfish. So Danielle, thank you for joining us today.
Oh, thank you for having me. So welcome to the aquarium. This is Sophie here. She's going to be feeding our sawfish. So this pole the wires that she has in her hand, she's going to put a little bit of food on there. And then this giant pole it's attached to is how we're going to be feeding our green sawfish. So today it looks like we have some mackerel. That looks very tasty. Usually we can shove vitamins in there as well for the animals if they need extra. And then we take it and we put it in the water for our wonderful animals. So Sophie's just going to go on her regular feeding. And so she's only trying to feed the sawfish. So the trouble is sometimes they don't want to eat what we give them. And sometimes the other fish seem to be a little bit more into it. So that we do have to take the food out of the water a little bit to make sure that we're not getting the other fish to eat it. But we do have two green sawfish. There's one over there who will hopefully come and get some food. And I think my video just died again. Oh, I'm sorry, Joe.
It's okay. It's okay. We can still hear you. Just leave it running for a minute and let's see if it kicks back in.
Okay. So these are green sawfish. The two that we have one boy and one girl. The boy is quite a bit smaller than the girl. And these are one of the largest sawfish in the world. And they don't naturally live close to the America. They happen to live on the other side in the Indo-Pacific, and they live in the shoreline area. So these animals are really scary looking, but they're really not that dangerous. They happen to lie in wait at the bottom, and then they use their long saw that's off the front of their face, and then they swoop it, and then it'll hit the fish, and then they'll eat the food that they happen to hit. So when the animals are a little bit more, the animals are just waiting for the food to come by, and then they'll just stun it, and then the fish will get a chance to get eaten. And then they can also eat shellfish, and they'll actually dig that up out of the sand. So what we feed them here, mackerel. Mackerel's a pretty fast fish. It's probably not what they're going to be eating in their natural habitat. However, they will end up eating things that are a little bit slower and that they can more easily hunt. They're not likely to eat what we have living with them here because we do feed them well enough so that they won't eat what we live with. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, we can still hear you, Danielle. Do you want to try and exit and pop back in? It didn't.
Yeah, it gave me a little warning. Okay.
Okay. So boys and girls, if you've never been to the aquarium before, there's the top of the dangerous lagoon is right in the heart of the aquarium. So sometimes it can be tricky to get the signal. So she's going to exit and pop back in for us, and that should free the video up again. But keep your eyes open because there's sand tiger sharks, reef sharks, and then there's definitely the two sawfish in the tank. So let's wait for Danielle to pop back in. We'll just give her a minute. Sometimes technology is really awesome, and some days it doesn't work so well for us, but I have a feeling that she'll be able to get back in shortly. And we'll get to see the sawfish in action. So it looks like we do have a class from Barrie, which is pretty close to, oh, there's Danielle.
All right.
All right,
hopefully that works again. I am back. I love this program so much.
I think we're just in a part of that's really inside, so I think it's just tricky.
Yeah. The Wi-Fi doesn't like it over here. That's okay. You can see us again. I'll try not to move the camera as much as possible so it stays with us. So our sawfish have eaten 2 pieces of fish so far, so you haven't missed much, but they will be coming back hopefully. And you can see a shark fin at the top of your screen just sticking out of the water. So a few of our sharks are going to be feeding right over there on the right where those 2 aquarists are. And those are where the sand tiger sharks are going to be eating. So our 2 green sawfish, the larger of the 2, our female, she is the largest animal here at our aquarium. She is just under 500 pounds and she's around 14 feet long. So she's a very, very large animal.
I don't know why.
And it looks like Sophie probably has seen the sawfish coming close. Yep, there's one. So it's coming out from the left in a couple seconds. We're going to hopefully see the animal eat. So Sophie here has put the food in the water.
Please, just hold on.
There we go. So, sorry it is a little dark here. The lights are very bright. But they actually have a mouth in the bottom of their body, and that's what she's trying to get at there. So their mouth is not at their snout, it's actually underneath their face part. And sawfish seems to be a little picky with their food today. And that happens, just like you or I. Sometimes we're a little bit picky, and then yes, the fish seem to want to eat that so much more than the sawfish does. And she'll try again. So the sawfish have their mouth on the bottom and their gill slits are also on the bottom. So if you ever come to our aquarium, you'll see them all the time resting on the top of the tunnel. And that's where they like to stay. And the reason for their gill slits to be on the bottom and their mouth on the bottom is because that's where they're eating food is actually on the bottom of the water, on the bottom of the ocean. And these animals are actually more closely related to stingrays than they are to sharks because of that. So a lot of people think that they're sharks. They're not, they're stingrays. Sharks have gill slits on the sides of their bodies and their mouth at the front, and that's the main difference between the 2.
They're not going to want to.
This large fish in front of me here, that's called a tarpon, and every so often we throw fish at their face, and that's what they're going to be eating. And this is a sand tiger shark. So the 2 green sawfish that we have are pretty lazy in general. So yes, technically they could eat what we have living with them, all these fish, but they're not going to because we feed them well enough for them not to want to eat what we have them living with. It does happen on occasion, but not too often. We wouldn't want that to happen because we have lots of animals in our aquarium. Right now, when you're looking into the water, you actually don't see that many fish, and that's because we have distracted them with food on the 2 sides of the aquarium. So there's an aquarist over there, that's Caitlin, who we met last week, and she's feeding the small fish in that section, and we have another one on the other side feeding the small fish. And we distract them away from the sharks when the sharks are eating, and the sawfish. And there's one stingray who's being fed to my left, but he doesn't seem to be coming back anytime soon. Green sawfish are actually not doing so well in their natural habitat, mainly because of that wonderful saw they have on their face. So that saw is really eye-catching, and a lot of people want to have that as a trophy. So there are some people that go out and hunt for these animals and they just take the saw off and then they'll keep it in their homes as a trophy. And there's the stingray coming back. And these saws can easily get caught in fishing nets. Because this animal is so big, it's a good trophy catch as well. So a lot of the larger sawfish have been taken out of their natural population because they've been hunted out a lot, and they're actually considered critically endangered now. So they're not doing so well. A lot of it is due to extra nets being in the water, but also because they're so closely related to sharks, their fins are used for shark fin soup as well. This is a really, really cool animal. That rostrum they have, the snout, has all of those teeth on it to protect them, not to protect themselves, but to hunt for food. So if they don't have those, they can't easily sense their food because it is filled with sensors, and they can't easily catch their food either. So it is really helpful for the animals to keep their rostrum intact. And the teeth that are on the side are very similar to their scales. So they're made with dentin, which is the layer under our enamel in our teeth. And instead of them having new ones coming in all the time like sharks' teeth, they do have that in their mouth. But on their rostrum, it just continuously grows, kind of like beaver teeth. So no matter what, their teeth are good. The rostrum teeth, the ones on their nose, are going to continue to grow out unless they're fully lost, and then they can't grow them again. But it's pretty rare. And that's mainly because if they break off into a fish, they want to be able to use them again, because if they can't, then they won't be able to get any food. I don't know, they haven't come back. They're not really the best at eating all the time, but They do come around. Only the male has been coming around, actually. We do have a female somewhere, but she's hiding. She doesn't seem to want any food. But of the two sawfish we have, because we do have a boy and a girl, we're hopeful at some point we'll have some babies, but it is quite unlikely because they don't seem to like each other very much. But it hasn't happened in captivity. So these two sawfish, who are not initially from the wild, like they did come from another aquarium before they came here. They actually were from the wild initially. So if you ever see a sawfish in an aquarium, they probably weren't born at one, because it's really hard to get them to reproduce because they're so lazy. However, in their natural habitat, they're not doing so well. It does take them a long time to get to the age where they can have babies. And if they don't get to that age, they're caught in a fishing net or something like that, and they won't be able to make to their full age. And that would be really bad, because then we can't have any more really cute sawfish. And when they are born, they're live bearers, just like most stingrays, which means they're going to have live young, just like we are when we're young. And then they have a special casing on the outside of their rostrum in order to protect the mother, because those teeth on their snout are actually pretty sharp right away. They dull out over time just because of use, but right away they're pretty sharp, and they have a special case in order to make sure they don't hurt their moms when they're born. And our sawfish, whenever you come to visit, they do spend most of their time resting on the surface of the tunnel, and that's because they're nocturnal. So they spend most of their time waiting for food to come by, and then at nighttime they do move around a little bit more, because they are a little bit more protective in the cover of night. And other than humans, there are very few predators of sawfish. Most often these animals are not predated on by anything naturally, maybe sharks, but really they're not really the easiest animal to eat, because it's just so big, and you don't want to get on the wrong side of their rostrum. Just so you know, our aquarius actually go in here. Our aquarius actually go in here all the time to clean our exhibits. So we actually have to go through and scrub all of the fake coral in here and collect anything that drops in, like any cell phones or anything like that. And the easiest way for you to help out these animals is to actually eat sustainably. So you can choose food resources where we don't take out too much of the natural population, and we're also not taking out animals that can't replenish themselves easily, like a sawfish. They really take a long time to grow up, to reproduce, and we don't want to take too many out of their natural habitat. That would be really bad for them. So if you want to help out, you can eat sustainably. There are two websites that I can tell you about. You can easily learn more about and talk to your parents. One is called Ocean Wise, and that's the Canadian one. And the other one is called Sea Choice, and that's called SEA. And that actually helps out these animals a lot, so we can figure out which ones that we should consume, if you're a fish eater, which ones we should eat, in order to make sure that we're not taking out too much of the natural population. I can see the stingray coming by. Hey, Joe, I'm ready for questions if you are.
All right. Sounds good. So they're not super cooperative today, but we did see them cruising over the tunnel a couple times, so that was pretty cool. Let's see. Let's meet a classroom. First classroom, we're going to go to Mrs. Holden's group, and I believe she's got kindergartens with her in Spruce Grove in Canada. Let me turn your microphone on. How we doing, boys and girls? You guys have a question about the sawfish or the shark in the tank? Sorry, we didn't quite catch that.
Okay, we're working on it. Carter's wondering what happens if
Can you try that one more time? Try coming a little closer to the microphone.
Carter's wondering what happens if a shark
If a shark does...
loses a tooth.
Oh, did you hear that, Danielle? What happens if one of the sharks loses its tooth?
Oh, what happens if one of our sharks loses their teeth? Well, when the divers go in, they collect them. And we don't actually sell them in our gift shop. A lot of people think that we do, but we keep them for ourselves. So we end up having our sand tiger sharks and our sandbar sharks in this exhibit losing their teeth all of the time, and we end up finding them a lot. The other three animals in here that will lose their teeth are the sawfish, the rough-tailed stingray, and the nurse sharks. But all three of those animals have teeth that look a lot like the rocks, so finding them is really difficult. So we don't end up finding those animals' teeth, but the other two we do end up finding all the time, and we keep them for ourselves and make necklaces out of them. The animals don't need them anymore, so if we didn't take them out, the bottom of our exhibits would just look like teeth. And then we would hurt ourselves if we were to kneel on them because they're sharp and pointy.
And then their teeth grow back pretty quickly.
Yeah, they actually have new ones already in their mouths. So most sharks will get around 50,000 teeth in their lifetime, and they'll lose about one a week. So we usually find a lot around the areas where we feed the animals.
All right, so let's meet another classroom. This time we're going to go to Mrs. Reed's class. They're joining us from Algonquin in Illinois, and they're a group of grade 5 students, and your microphone should be on. You guys have a question, grade 5s?
Yeah, they're here. Oh, go ahead. He's coming. Nice and loud.
Sawfish the same as swordfish?
Did you catch that, Danielle? He's wondering if sawfish are the same as swordfish.
Sawfish the same as swordfish? And the answer is no. So a sawfish is a type of stingray and very closely related to a shark, but a swordfish is neither. It's actually really closely related to a typical fish, like a marlin. So they have a really kind of circular snout, and it looks a lot like a pointing stick with a point on one end. And then the sawfish has a flat snout. So, and they're also really, really big. So the sawfish are huge compared to a swordfish. You can look them up, and unless they're mislabeled when you do a Google search, most often you'll be able to see the big difference between the two. The animal called a marlin or a sailfish, those are closely related to a swordfish.
Which one should we?
All right.
Which one can we not Google?
Classroom. They're in Barry's Bay in Ontario, and there's 4, 5, and 6 students. How you doing today, everybody? All right. Do you guys have a question?
I wonder how many teeth got on that.
Can you go a little louder? The microphones are having trouble picking up today.
I wonder how many teeth got on that saw.
Do you know, Danielle, about how many teeth are on the saw? On the rostrum?
Oh, how many teeth? Actually, this animal has, I read on it, but I can't remember. So I think it's between 24 and 30 teeth on their rostrum, and each different species of sawfish has a different range of number of saw teeth, and that's how we can tell them apart really easily. So a lot of the scientific records that we have for this animal, a lot of them are from people that have actually harvested the rostrum, and then you can count the teeth and figure out what animal it comes from. The easiest way to tell a green sawfish from everybody else is that the teeth change in distance between the next ones. So the ones close to their face are pretty far apart, and the ones closer to the tip of their rostrum are pretty close together. So that's the easy way to tell them apart from the other ones.
All right, very cool. Let's go to Mrs. Stevens' class this time. They're joining us, there we go, from Garden City, and grade 5 students. How are we doing, Mrs. Stevens' class? You guys have a question about the sawfish?
Are the sawfish prey
Sorry, are the sawfish?
or predator?
Oh,
I think that's based on their color. Was that a question about their color?
Are they prey or predator?
so she's
Oh, is
wondering.
it a prey or predator?
Yeah.
All right, so a sawfish is a predator. They happen to eat a lot of different types of fish. They're not really that picky when it comes to the food resources. They're pretty picky here because we feed them, and we do vary their diet, but we don't vary it probably as much as they would get in the wild. And in their natural habitat, they'll eat mostly slower moving fish. But if they caught a fast moving fish, they'd probably eat it. And because they don't have sharp teeth, they are eating things that are smaller than their mouth, because they're most likely they're trying to swallow it whole. If it's too big, then they can't actually eat it. So like the tarpons, probably not an animal they'll naturally eat. One, they live near the surface, and two, the tarpons are huge. So most often they'll be eating any of the smaller fish. In their natural habitats, they'll be eating the smaller fish and any shellfish that they can dig up from under the sand, because they do have a lot of sensors on their rostrum, which means they can sense the animal, any of their prey moving in their habitat. Especially if they're moving underneath the sand, they can easily sense that, and they can do that by sensing the electricity that the animal puts out.
All right, we're going to jump to our next classroom. I think this is our group in Kelowna, British Columbia. Is there a group in Kelowna? You guys give me a big wave. Yeah. All right. Do you guys have a question? It has to be nice and loud. The microphones are really acting up today. Oh man, sorry guys, the microphones are really staticky today. Do you want to try one more time, a little closer if you can? I wish we could. That was much better when you came closer. About how big? Try one more time, bud. Oh man, I'm really sorry guys, but the microphones in Google Hangouts today just are not cooperating with us.
The question was, what happens if another animal?
So what happens if a sawfish...
Another fish is in the aquarium.
Oh, if another fish eats another fish in the aquarium?
All right, I can answer that.
Okay, I think that was the question, yep.
All right, so what happens if a sawfish eats another fish at the aquarium? Well, it's not a big deal. It does happen. Sometimes our sawfish decide that if they want to eat what they live with, but most often it's usually a sick or injured animal because they're easier to catch, and our animals are pretty lazy when it comes to food. They'd rather get fed by us because we spoon feed our animals. That's what they like and they're used to. And they know that if they wait 2 days, they're gonna get food anyway, because we do feed them 3 times a week, which is more than they would eat in the wild. They usually eat only 1 large meal a month in the wild. However, in their natural habitat, they would normally eat this sort of stuff anyway. And to be honest, like, there are a bunch of animals at our aquarium that would probably eat the other one. So it is a fish world out there, so there's a good chance that one of them will eat another. But our most common animals that will eat each other are actually not fish, they're the crustaceans. So the shrimp, the lobsters, and the crabs are more likely to eat each other just because they have their hard protective shells and they can lose those. So once they lose their hard protective shells, they're very vulnerable. And we usually take them off display, but we do have a shrimp display, and the shrimp, we don't really notice when they are molting because they molt really quickly. But the sharks and the stingrays and the sawfish, we end up feeding them well enough to prevent them from eating what they live with. Because if we didn't, they would eat what they lived with, and we wouldn't want that to happen. They also happen to be living with fish they wouldn't normally want to eat just because they are pretty bony, but, you know, desperate times, they might actually go after it if they want to.
All right, and let's visit our final class. We have Mrs. Whipple's class. They're joining us from Cape Elizabeth in the United States, a grade 4 classroom. How are you guys doing today? Can you hear us okay?
Yes.
Ooh, your microphone sounds good. Go ahead with a question if you have one.
How long do sawfish live up to?
How long do sawfish live up to? Okay, So they live for about 30 years. That's how much information we have from their captive data and any tagging data we have, which means that we put a special electronic device inside of a sawfish so we can actually figure out where it's going in their life. But other than that, we actually don't know too much about how long they live because they haven't lived from birth to death in an aquarium. However, the length of a sawfish, how long do they get? They can actually get up to, I think it's like 4 meters long. So they're a pretty large animal.
All right, and let's visit Mrs. Whipple's class one more time because I saw a lot of hands when we clicked there. So let's go one more time. Your microphone should be on. There we go. Oh, and just as we said that now, we're not getting a good microphone coming through. Try again, bud.
Try it again.
Are all sawfish the same colors?
Are all sawfish the same color?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so yes, kind of. They all kind of are in the gray, green, brownish color tone, and that's just to help them camouflage. They're just the same sort of coloration as most sharks, and that's mainly the reason that it's been that's the reason why that's been so selected for is because they can easily camouflage with the sand, and then they also have counter-current shading on them because they have the darker color on the top and the lighter color on the bottom. So if you're underneath them and you look up and you just see sky, and if you're at the top and you look down, you actually just see the sand. So the animals are really good at camouflaging. But the green sawfish got their name because they're slightly more green, and they're actually only known that in the North America area. So if you go somewhere else, they actually have different names. One of them is the long foam sawfish.
All right, and let's steal one more question before we have to go today. So let's see, which classroom do we have some waving coming from? Let's go to Mrs. Reed's classroom. Your microphone is on. Nice and loud because the microphones just aren't cooperating with us today.
What would happen if the sawfish was eaten? Wouldn't their snout cut the animal that ate it from the inside?
So are you wondering what would happen when a sawfish is eating? Doesn't it cut the animal?
But what if it is eaten?
Sorry, bud, one more time?
What would happen if the sawfish was eaten?
Oh, was eaten. Okay. So Danielle, they're wondering about if a sawfish was eaten. Wouldn't the saw be hard for the other animal to eat?
Yeah, actually the saw would be very hard for another animal to eat. And most often if they were eaten by another animal, the saw, they probably wouldn't eat the saw portion just because there isn't much meat on them. It's pretty hard to eat, but a tiger shark was once found with a saw from a sawfish inside their belly, and like a big sawfish saw, so over 1 meter long. And tiger sharks are known to eat anything, so that's not that surprising that would happen, but most often predators of these animals will probably not eat that portion. And there are very few predators of sawfish in general.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Danielle. I'm glad the video cleared up because I was a little nervous at first, but it looks like we got through. And it's neat to be able to look down and see the people walking through the tunnel, enjoying the dangerous lagoon. All right. Well, again, Danielle, thank you so much. Sophie, thank you for feeding the fish for us. That was really cool to see the sawfish and the stingrays and even get a little glimpse of the sea turtle at the very beginning. So once again, thanks for another great trip to the aquarium.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you for being so good with all of the technical difficulties.
That's okay. You never know. Sometimes we get perfection and sometimes the microphones go on us. So we figured it out. But yeah, I definitely look forward to our next hangout. I'm going to turn the microphone on, let the classroom say goodbye and thank you, and then we'll sign off for today. So here we go. Microphone's coming on. All right, boys and girls, thanks so much for hanging out today. Signing off. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.